This is a quick look at burlage, which is uncommon on stamps, but it is there from time to time, mostly in older stamps. And well, what is burlage? Well, it's a pattern. Most definitions refer to it as an underprinting, which goes on the paper before the stamp impression itself is put on the paper. So because it's done that way, I think it's helpful to consider burlage more along the lines of analysis of the paper than of the stamp design itself. Burlage also appears on documents and certificates and things like that. Vladimir, can you tell us what this is?
It's special stamp to save some money.
So it would be a receipt or something like that, or
It's not probably, it's for bank issue.
That word marca, is that stamp?
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
100 ruble it cost. And those time it was also a really big amount of money. For example, for 500 ruble, you can buy a house.
well, I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but it was an example of burlage. You can see it there in the background. And so it's really a security measure, and that, in my mind, makes it akin somewhat to watermarking or to another process that was done on a few stamps early on, most often in Switzerland, and that is putting a silk thread in the paper itself. Can you, where's my, can you see this line here running
Yeah.
across the stamp? That is a silk thread in the paper itself. And burlage, I think, is something similar. Its purpose is something similar to that.
Excuse me, Roger, those are very nice pictures of watermarks you've got there. How did you achieve those pictures?
How did I get those? I don't know. These are from the British Commonwealth, and sometimes you can see the watermark very easily.
Hmm.
Sometimes you can't. And even when you can see it easily, we've talked about this before, it's very confusing as to what watermark number is the appropriate identification. I have long since given up on trying to, for instance, in Australia, there are about 16 different size letters CA, and I have no confidence whatsoever in my identifying them. This is a stamp from Hanover. We spell it differently than they did back then, 1850. You can see the burlage here. In German, that's Netzwerk. And I like this stamp because it has a lot of writing on it. It's very, very old-fashioned, isn't it? It's got the word Franco, Hanover, and then it has abbreviations running vertically, as well as a Latin motto. One of the words on the stamp, well, Franco means paid, essentially. The Germans spelled it with a K, usually. Not, however, on this stamp. The importance of Franco means that the person who sent the letter has already paid for the postal service, as opposed to what happened almost always in earlier days when the recipient had to pay either everything or in addition to the person who sent it. Alan has talked about the not the abbreviation exactly, but in Germany at the time, there were Groschen for the currency, but there were two kinds of Groschen. And Alan pointed this out on early stamps of Greece when there were two kinds of, was it drachma?
There were special stamps overprinted AM, or at least what appears alpha mu, which indicates metal value. And those the values of those stamps were pegged to a currency backed by gold or silver, as opposed to other values which were not so backed by by precious metals. So there's that distinction This was about 1900, after a period of excessive inflation in Greece. They issued new stamps with currency which was pegged to metal values.
To inspire more confidence in the
Right.
in
It was a
yeah.
way of stabilizing the value of the currency.
This notion of a nation or a conglomeration of nations having one name for its currency, but two types of the same currency goes way, way back. In Renaissance France, there was the livre, equivalent to the British pound, but there were two kinds of livre. There was the livre de Paris and there was the livre de Lyon. And the one from
Uh-huh.
Lyon was less valuable than the one from
Uh-huh.
Paris. I
Uh-huh.
don't know why people put up with this, but they did. And
Well,
I
it's
often
common.
just
Yeah.
go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to say that when countries go through a period of extreme inflation, the cure for that is usually to issue a new currency, which is called like new pence or new drachma or new mark, as the case may be, um, in which one new uh, new value is equal to so and so many thousand or million of the old ones. So then you can trade in your old currency for new currency at a more which has a more sensible rate. It's
Yeah,
not getting
yeah,
up into the billions or trillions.
yes, yes, yes. I often think that Britain did something similar when they had, of course, the pound sterling, but they also had the guinea, which was worth 1 shilling more than the pound. Uh, why? Why do they do what they do? It'd be like us having a kind of a dollar and then also a dollar worth $1.10. That makes
I
no
think
sense
the
to me.
guinea was gold. The actual coin was gold rather than silver,
Uh-huh.
so it had more
Uh-huh.
intrinsic value.
Uh-huh. Okay. And the last words on this stamp were, you can see him in the little ribbon up on top there. Suscipere et finire. So start it and finish it. I don't know. It sounds almost like a
Motto.
threat, but but it's, I guess it's good advice if it's not meant in an aggressive manner. This stamp has Burelage on it. Again, it's way back at the beginning of the adhesive postage stamp era. You can barely see it, but if you look in the center, if you look at it quickly, you might think it's just the roughness of the paper, but it is in there. On another topic, it's just an aside here. This is Scott #1, although it was issued after what is now Scott #2. For some reason, early on, it's long since been corrected. Everything gets a Scott number chronologically now, although in different sections, uh, semi-postal, airmail, so on, things like that. But early on, when Scott started numbering, if stamps were put out in what we would call a set, or very quickly one upon the other, Scott gave the #1, the lower number, to the lower value of the stamp. The Dominican Republic had some Burelage only briefly. I guess 1 peso was a fair amount of money down there. And that's why this one stamp from the Dominican has Burelage on it. After the war, Russia issued many, many stamps with medals of honor on it and so on. Some of them had Burelage on them and some didn't. These are two that did have it. You have to look a little closely sometimes, but it's there. This is a set that I like very, very much for a lot of reasons. Mexico issued a very long running period, about 14 years, I think, of stamps, some of which, like these, had no Burelage. The theme of the stamp series was products made in Mexico that the world wants. So this is Mexico exports coffee, this is steel tubes and things like that. That's a very, very long set, and it continued for years, as I said. Some of the stamps, as the values got higher, got Burelage on them. Most of them didn't have it, but these ones, for instance, did have it. And you can see, if you look closely, that the curvature of this Burelage on the left stamp sort of centers, if it were a circle, around a center point that would be southeast. The other one centers around a center point that would be theoretically northwest. This is relatively rare with the process of Burelage. Most of the time, it's simply a repeating pattern, as you can see best on this one, which it makes no difference which way you would turn the stamp, the Burelage would be the same. One more aside about this series of stamps from Mexico that I find absolutely fascinating. These stamps were issued in the 70s and through the 80s. Mexico experienced terrible inflation at this time. Roughly speaking, if you look at the chart, the second row here, the second column rather, you can see that from 75 to 78, prices just about doubled. Over the next 3 years, they doubled again. The next year, they doubled just in 1 year, and they more than doubled in the following 2 years. So in this 10-year period, the value of the currency declined by 2 to the 4th or 16 times. So they had to really up the value on the stamps. The consequence of this, the lowest value in this set is 5 centavos, 5 cents. The highest value that I've seen, and it's hard to find to be definitive because the series went on so long, it may be hiding someplace in another number. Scott does not amalgamate all these into one set, all right there on one page. It's scattered through. You know, the way they put like C also numbers, so on and so on. So the smallest value in this was 5 cents. The highest I've seen is 6,000 pesos, which means that the highest value in this set is 120,000 times the lowest value in this set. I think that's rather remarkable. I get to the end here now. I'm just quibbling, but this is a beautiful stamp from France, an expensive stamp, but it means I don't have it. This has Burelage on it too, but the Burelage was placed on the stamps after the impression. The image was made. So is it still technically Burelage, or is there supposed to be some other word we should use when we talk about this? In the white background, you can see the Burelage running diagonally. And I guess if you look closely under a microscope, you would see the Burelage lying on top of the ink from the design. 50 francs in 1936 was a lot of money. I don't know how many dollars today would be equivalent to, but maybe in the range of 20 or 40. I don't know, but a lot of money. So they put the security measure on it in the form of Burelage at a time when Burelage is going out of style, by the way.
Well, the stamp design itself has that pattern of engraving in the wavy border surrounding the vignette. What do they call that? Lathe work or something?
I'm not sure.
That in itself would be a considerable deterrent to counterfeiting.
Yes, but apparently they felt one more step was necessary.
Right.
And it was done after the stamp impression was put on. And the last one, this is a bit of a mystery to me. This is from Danzig, which is obviously an overprint on a German stamp, a prior 35 penny stamp. And it has Burelage on it. But as far as I can tell, the German stamp itself did not have it. So I don't know what they did. Did they take the image or the die from Germany, print it again on paper with Burelage on it, and then overprint it Danzig?
You can see the Burelage on the face of Germania, which suggests that it may have been printed over an existing stamp that didn't have Burelage.
That's a good suggestion.
I think that seems likely to me.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'll go with that. And that is it.
Very nice. I like the way the background of all of your pages here are themselves burelaged.
Yes, they are.